Guys, I don't know how many of you actually remember that commercial, but it took a lot of flack because we have decided in our world today that athletes should be role models. And we've decided that athletes should actually help us raise our children. And the people that they see on television should be people that our children could live their lives after. And how many of you know that your kids actually watch TV and pay very close attention? Yeah, I'm in the Walmart this morning with Jordan because, well, everybody in my family was sick this weekend, so we're buying stuff. And we're walking through, and she says, "Daddy, we need one of these." And it was one of those erase all cleaners, you know, that's on TV all the time that you can touch anything in the world and it's clean instantly. You've seen those? She says, "We need one of these." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because it cleans everything." I said, "How do you know that?" And she said, "Because it's on the TV." Oh, great, honey. That's good to know you're learning stuff. But when we saw this commercial and we began to hear from Charles Barkley, that I don't want to be the role model for your children. You should raise your children. And as I looked at this night, I looked back at that song they just played right before that about my hero. And I don't know if you have heroes in your life. I'm pretty sure most of us do. I have a couple, but my number one hero is and always has been my father. And everything that he said to me all the way through, I paid attention to. I didn't always listen to, but I paid attention to somehow because it comes back. Because he lived his life in a way that pointed me to the direction that I wanted to go. To me, that's a hero. And I think when I listen to Charles Barkley in the commercial, first of all, Barkley's one of my favorite people of all time because he always says whatever he's thinking. Right, Steve Crockus, you with me there? Yeah, Steve and I are that way. Whatever comes to mind last, it comes out first, you know. And he is always willing to put out on the line whatever he's thinking. But what he said that night was, "Hey, guys, I don't want to be the role model because you should be the role model." And what he said was, "I don't want to take responsibility for your children." And I started thinking about that. Because most of us, and you know it's man night, and we're focusing on some men issues here, but ladies, you're going to follow along tonight just as well, and God's going to teach us all some cool things. But the truth is, as men and as dads, if you're a father, you'll understand this completely. One day you will be, and you'll pick up on this. But you love it when your children consider you their hero. No matter what, you love that. You want that to happen in your life. And we have 3 children now. One of them hadn't started considering anybody heroes. She's 5 months, so she's still kind of wishy-washy. She don't know no better. It's exactly right. Maybe she's the only one that does know better. She's just holding off. But my 5-year-old's Jordan, and she does everything that I do, which is pretty bad because, well, you know. Taylor is going to grow up and be just like her mother, which means she's going to be sweet and kind, and she's not going to say things that shouldn't be said, and she's going to hold back when she's supposed to and just love people. Yes, yes. Jordan, on the other hand, is going to be just like me, except she's going to be this tall, and she's going to be fired up at all times. And she already tells you everything that's on her mind no matter what. But I love that. And I love when my children do crazy things and people look at me and go, "Oh, we know where they got that." You know what? We do know where they got that. And I'm proud of that. Because I love the fact that my children will express themselves. And my children will say whatever's on their mind and do whatever because they feel safe and they feel secure. And you know what? Here's who I am, so this is what you get. I love that. But you know how quick I am when my children do something that's really, really out there? I know y'all have never seen that from my kids. How quick am I to say, "Oh, they got that from their mother"? You know it, guys. You're the same way. You come home and the kids have just torn everything apart and the world has gone crazy, and you say, "What are you teaching these children?" And we love to be the hero when it's fun. We love to be the hero when everybody's laughing about it. But as men, what we have a tendency to do is try not to be the hero when it comes time to be responsible. And you can't say amen and laugh out loud at the same time. That's just too much there. But that is what we do. And we try our best. We try our best to become the hero without ever having to be responsible for what's going on. And you understand at the first of this series, I told you that sometimes we will say things in here that don't apply to every man in the world and don't apply to every woman in the world. But the majority of what I've got to say tonight applies to a ton of men in our culture and in the world that you live in every day. Because men love the good parts and love to be the hero and hate taking responsibility for the bad things. We've learned that over the years, and we've watched that in our lives. And here's the key to that. Men are terrible when it comes to taking responsibility over the spiritual issues. Because most of us, and I understand I'm talking a lot about kids and families tonight and stuff like that, but it'll fit. Most of us, most men in our culture today have left the spiritual raising of our children to our wives. Most of us, because here's the truth, 60% of the people that go to church today on a normal basis are women. 25% of those women that go to church alone and are married, but their husbands won't come to church with them. And they are the family that woman walks into church every day with her 17 kids with her, and she gets up and she gets them ready and she brings them to church while her husband is asleep in the bed. And he is waiting to get up about 10 o'clock so he can start watching whatever sport he's watching that day. That's 25% of the women in your churches today. Because as men, we love the fun stuff, we love to be the hero, but we do not take responsibility, and we definitely don't take responsibility on the spiritual issues. And I began to think about this. You can see it all the time in divorced couples. Men in divorce situations, most of them, now I'm telling you, there are exceptions to this, and we see exceptions to this all the time. But when the husband in a divorce situation says, yeah, the mom takes them to church, she's fine. When they'll come here, we won't go. Mom will take care of that. How many husbands do we know of? How many husbands are in this room that you don't have to raise your hand, but you know that your wife goes to your children's room at night and prays for them and you sit and watch TV? How many of you are here with your children and you know that you've not taken them where they need to be spiritually? I believe tonight's whole message is I am not a role model, because that's what Charles Barkley told us a long time ago. But the truth is, you are a role model. The truth is, you don't get to take time off of being a role model. Because what God tells us is that you are a role model no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. Someone is following you. And someone is watching what you do. And I just think as men, we take way too much time of our lives and say, okay, I'm just going to back off a little bit and let them do whatever. I don't think I'm going to be the role model today. I want you to understand, especially if you have children in this world, but I want you to understand that everything that you do, no matter where you are, what you do, will be copied. I want you to see this video real quick.
Looks like rain again today. Dark clouds gather and fill the sky. Don't know how to talk to you, just know how to say goodbye.
Have you actually got a driver's license? I don't think so. Did you see his back there? Go back where you came from. Learn this man. Go back where you came from. Get the driver's license to me. What's wrong with you, Harry? What's wrong with you? Get over here. You don't want to do. I've had enough of you. I've had enough of you.
Everything that you do, all day, every day, someone's going to role model that. Someone's going to follow that. And it is amazing to me how many husbands and how many dads and how many men in general have said spiritually, I'm just going to stay out of that. We do it with our friends all the time because people will say, hey, have you checked up on so-and-so, a friend of yours? How's he doing spiritually? Oh, man, that spiritual stuff, that's not really my business. I don't want to go getting into his stuff. You know, he doesn't really like me asking about things like that. You know, if he wants to do something spiritual, that's his issue. He can handle it. And we have this man thing that we go on that says, you know what, I don't really need to be messing with my friends in their spiritual lives because that's just not for me. And we actually step back and say, you know what, I'm just going to let all this go by, and I'm going to be the hero when it's fun to be the hero. I want us to look at some scripture tonight, and I want to see where that attitude comes from and how we got to that. In Genesis chapter 1, it's right, it goes all the way back to the creation of everything that we have here, where this problem started and how we ended up here. So let's look at it in chapter 1. I'll read along as you can read it on the screen. It says this, Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And then it skips down to 31. It says, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, and there was a sixth day. Guys, I don't know if you've heard that story or not before, but the creation took place when God, in a 6-day period, built everything that you've ever seen, thought of, heard of, or know of. He created all of that. And on the 6th day, he created all of us. Now, not us specifically, but others like us, to lead to us. Male and female, he created them on that 6th day. And for the first time in the 6 days, all other 5 days he had created things, and he said, he looked at it, he stopped and evaluated his work and said, that is good. And on the 6th day, when he created us, he said, that is very good. So you can start out by understanding that God loves you and appreciates you because he created you and he was proud when he made you. But let's look at how he made us. All creation, God gave over to man. Everything that he had built, everything that he had created, every seed-bearing plant, every animal, everything, he said to man at that time, here's the deal. Your job is populate this planet and rule over everything else. Now let's look at that for just a minute. Here's your job, guys. In a nutshell, this is what God told you when he created you. Have a whole lot of sex and be the king of the world. Anything wrong with that? And most of you are thinking, oh man, just one of those would be pretty cool. You know, I mean, if you're doing that, you don't have to be king. And if you're king, yeah, who cares, whatever. I run the whole show. That's what God told you as male, as when he created you. He said, ladies and gentlemen, everything out there is under your control. Your job is to populate this planet and control everything else. And I want you to see what happens next. Because in Genesis chapter 3, it says, now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, anybody need to know why the serpent was more crafty than the other animals? Yes, and he could talk. Pay attention. He said to the woman, most animals, you know, like this bear couldn't really talk, so that's what made him crafty, I'm thinking. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, we may eat from fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die. You will not surely die, the serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were open, and they realized they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Let's look at what just happened here, because we have spent an eternity of men blaming the woman for, accepting that apple first and blaming that on them and all this kind of stuff. But let's look at what happens. First thing that happens with the lady is this. The serpent tells her, God is lying to you, and there is more out there for you than he's giving you. And if you'll eat this, you'll be like him, and you will see something that you've never seen before. Now, ladies, I learned something about this, and I've watched it in my wife a little bit, and she's not here tonight, so I can give all the examples I need. Ladies don't like to think that there's something in the world that they don't know yet. No amens on that? When you're talking to a young lady and she says to you, how was your day? And you say, fine, that is not enough. When you get a phone call and you get off the phone and you say, hey, Bob and Judy had their baby. Really, what was it? No, I don't know. No boy, no girl, nothing? I have no idea. How big was it? What? I think it was a child. Move on. But I've noticed this, and I'm walking through this. This is what the devil did. This is what Satan, the serpent, did at this time. He grabbed onto something and said to Eve, listen, there's more out there for you, and God doesn't want you to have it. And that worked for her. Because as ladies, you want details. You want to know what's out there, and your biggest fear in life is that there is something known that you don't know yet. So you must find that out. I learned this. I watch this in my wife because how many of you ladies just like surprises? You love surprises. One. None of the rest of you like surprises. My wife hates them. Okay? Like she's okay with surprises, but they have to be now surprises. Like if I was to say to her, sweetheart, I got a great surprise for you I'm going to give to you Wednesday. Oh, no, I'm not. Because why? Because I was stupid enough to mention it on Sunday, so the surprise is coming today, people. You need to understand that about my sweet, loving, little, caring, wonderful wife. If you tell her you have something coming to her and you won't tell her what it is, you will give it to her before the day is over. Doesn't matter what you think, doesn't matter how tough you are, the surprise is over. Because she doesn't deal with that well. She must know. I see this in Eve. I see the first woman ever created even having that issue going, okay, God, you've told me this, but now I'm hearing that there may be something more, and I've got to try that out just to see. And I learned for the first time in my life, I can look at my wife and go, that's a sin. Yeah. You're wrong. You can't do that anymore. That whole desire to know and know and know, that's where we ended up, where we are today. Because Satan himself tempted her with that. And let's look at the next part. Where was the man during this process? Not being a man. He was right where? He was right beside her. Thank you from the Man Lounge. I usually get muddled stuff because they're eating pizza from the Man Lounge. So I'm glad I could hear you. The man was right beside her during the process. And listen, this is the man, listen guys, that was in control of the world. Okay? That was told by the God that created him. Everything that moves, everything that walks, everything that grows, everything that has seed in it, everything that it slithers on the ground is under your control. All of it is controlled by you. Now, how much stuff does Adam control? All of it. Because that's what God said, right? So in the process, he is watching this serpent tempt his bride. He is standing, she says specifically, he is right here next to me in this process. He is watching this take place. He is watching the serpent, which, by the way, he is in control of and could smack with no problem and shut the whole thing down at any point in time. He's watching this whole thing take place, and what does he do? He stands by her side and does what? Nothing. Stupid is as stupid does. He does absolutely nothing. This is the guy that could have at any point in time said, nope, you're done. God told us not to eat of that, so you're done. He could have easily stepped up next to his wife and said, Eve, this is something that God told us not to do. I'm smacking him down. We're done. And he did absolutely nothing. And I truly believe that we have men in our culture today that are doing exactly the same thing spiritually because of where that started thousands of years ago. Because we have men all over our world that have stepped back and said, well, spiritually, I'm just going to let y'all do your thing. If y'all want to go to church, go to church. If you don't, fine. I'll be here watching sports when you get home. I'll have the pizza ready. And we have decided as men, we can just step back and let whoever wants to run it, run it. And whoever wants to be in control can be in control because we're just men and we're just here and we don't want to cause any trouble. That's what Adam did. And everything from that point could have been stopped if he had stepped up and took control. Because God told him numerous times before that, you've got control over all of it. Do what I've called you to do. But I think that calls us to some things tonight, guys. Here's how bad Adam did. Not only did he completely wuss out over the whole thing that he was supposed to do there, then in verse 12, just a few verses later, the man said, the woman you put here with me, God, she gave me the fruit from the tree and I ate it. Not only does he not do anything, and then he blames her. How many of you know that guy? You're like, yeah, I think I heard of him. We do that, guys. We do that completely, and we'll be the hero and let our wives try to raise kids, let the mothers try to raise kids, let the women in the world try to raise kids in here and upstairs and whatever. And when it all goes wrong, we look back and say, see, what have you been teaching these kids? When God says to you and to me, hey, what have you been teaching these kids? What have you been telling your buddies at work about me and the way that we're supposed to live our lives? He actually blamed it on her at that time. But two thoughts, I think, lead us to this attitude as men we have come to grips with. One, we either think that we have nothing to offer, and we've been taught this. We've been taught as men in our culture, hey, you just chill out. You really don't have anything to offer anyway. Or we think that what we have to offer is not going to be enough. So because we're men and because we're trained this way, we think, well, if I don't have enough to offer or if what I do offer is not going to get it done, I'm just going to sit back here and watch. And I'm going to let the whole thing go by without bugging me. I want us to see tonight a few things that God calls us to. Because here's the deal. At my house, I have a big recliner. Big blue recliner that I almost brought tonight, but I was tired. I was in my recliner too long. I couldn't move it. And I come home in my afternoons whenever I get home, and the first thing I want to do is sit my tail down in my recliner. Yeah. Yeah. The man. That's the man series right there. Sit in the recliner and let it all go by. And I begin to listen to my family when my children come up and say, Daddy, will you go jump with me on the trampoline, the jumpaline as we call it at our house? Daddy, will you play this game? Daddy, will you do this? Daddy, will you do this? And Daddy's answer is almost always, give me just a minute and I'll be there. And I don't go there. And my children are learning. Once Daddy sits down in that recliner and pops the lid up, might be over for the night. And it seriously got bad enough last week that the two places I got home and sat down first, I woke up the next morning in the same spot. That ain't good, I don't think. It worked out for me, but it ain't good. But what God is showing me is, hey, Jared, when your children are looking for time with you to be the role model, what are you doing? When you are supposed to be leading others around this city and around this town into a relationship with me, what are you doing? Because I've been looking at it and through some study, and I figured this stuff out. Y'all know any men that are just angry? You know those kind of guys that at any point in time, they will jump out of their car and go beat up the guy in the car next to them for any reason whatsoever. Y'all know some of those. Do you know why guys get hooked up completely and totally sucked into sports? You know why guys get hooked into work so much that they're there 27 hours a day and you're lucky if they ever come home? Because they're looking for something to challenge them. They're looking for some kind of challenge in their life because men are built to be challenged, but they have forgotten where that challenge is really supposed to come from. You know why men are Tons and tons, percentage-wise, of men are on the internet looking at pornography every night. Listen, because this is going to really offend some of us. As men, it's easier to go to the internet and get what you want than to have to build a relationship to get what you want. And as husbands and as men in sexual relationships, it is easier for us to go click a button and get everything that we want than it is for us to take you to dinner and to watch a movie that you like and to listen to your kind of music. It's easier. And a lot of guys have accepted in the world that, hey, what I have to offer is probably not enough anyway, and this and that and this and that. But here's the key. God built us, men and women, differently. Have y'all ever noticed that? I love that fact, by the way. Love that fact. But God built men to be ready for sexual activity in how long? Second? Nanosecond? Ladies, the majority of you are built to take longer than that. And in our world today, seriously, this is the man that you're dealing with in our world today, and I'm sure none of us are in this room. They're all out there in Floyd County. But when you meet them, these are the men you're dealing with. I'd rather just go someplace else and get it than put that in. And guys, you are built and created for challenge. But your wife is built to be your challenge. There you go. And all of your married life, you are supposed to be dating and seeking after and taking out your wife. And all your relationship, you're supposed to be building a relationship with her that will meet every need in you physically, emotionally, all of those needs met in her. Why? Because you are seeking her, and you are dating her, and you are calling her, and you are after her. And man, that's just an example of where we are, because those guys that just get mad all the time, those guys are mad because there's no challenge in their life. And they're tired of their dull little, this is all I get life, and therefore they're mad at everybody. And men that don't accept the challenge to be the guy God called you to be, you'll always look for it in sports, you'll look for it in pornography, you'll look for it in whatever, work, you'll look for it wherever you can find it. God's biggest challenge for you is to step up and be the man He built you to be. Spiritually, that's the biggest challenge you'll ever get. What does He really want to see from us? Number one, He wants you to set an example of who Jesus is in every part of your life. In your relationship with your wife, you need to set an example of who Jesus is. In your relationship with your buddies at work, you need to set an example of who Jesus is. Scripture says in John 13, "Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you." An example of servanthood from the King of all kings. Then right below that, in a different passage in 1 Corinthians 11:1, this says this: "Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ." Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. You know what that is? That's somebody saying, you know what, guys, if you want to be like Jesus, just be like me, and you'll be more like Him. I would say that's a pretty big challenge. But we as guys, we're so bent on being challenged on the softball field, and we're so bent on being challenged with football, or we're challenged on this or that, or we're so focused on all these other things to challenge us. God says, you know what your biggest challenge in the world is just be like me. And if you can be like me, God will change the world around you, because He promises us that. Some of you, though, you're coaches and you teach people, you train people on how to swing a bat by saying to them, watch me do this and do it just like I do it. You train people in computers by watch me do this and I will show you how this is done, and then you do it like I do it. You train people in all that you do. If you're a teacher, you write stuff on the board and say to your children, write this down like I write it up here. Spiritually, you should be doing the same exact thing. Guys, if everybody wants to be like Jesus, do what I do, and you'll be there. Set an example in every way. And number two thing is this. He wants you to be willing to overcome every stupid idea you have that you are not and be the guy he built you to be. Let me read this passage to you and I'll explain that. It says in Exodus chapter 3, verse 7 through 11, the Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? You got a situation, the Israelites are being held captive by the Egyptians, and God comes to Moses and say, go to Pharaoh, the guy that's leading all the Egyptians, and say, I'm going to take these people out of here. And Moses said what most of us say as men, I think you got the wrong guy. I don't really think I'm the man you think I am. And through a number of times going back and forth, God says to Moses, you're the man, and he leads him to go and take his people out of Egypt. And I want you to see this because I think a lot of us have been called to do things by God that we very simply sit back and say, I don't really think that's me. I know God wants a lot of people to be all spiritual and be leaders and be examples, but I don't think I'm one of those. I want you to see what he does with Moses in chapter 14:21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on their right and on their left. Guys, what happened is they came to a body of water that they could not pass, and God said to Moses, hold your hand out over that water, and I'll spread the whole thing out. And he stands there holding his hand out, and God makes a way between two walls of water for their entire people, everybody, to go through. That's the guy that looked at God and said, I'm not really the one for you. I'm not really the one you're going to use. But you know what, guys? Today is the day you need to decide, I am the one God can use. I am the man that God can use to be an example to everyone around me. I am the man that God can use to be an example to my children, to my family, to my friends, to my coworkers, to everyone that I come in contact with. God calls me to be Jesus in front of them, to live an example of Christ in front of them. And my challenge is this. I think most of us would step back right now, even with our friends, our family members, our children, and go, I wonder what they see in me. Because the truth is, God says you should be able to look at the people around you and say, if you want to be like Jesus, just follow my example, and I'll take you that direction. Guys, tonight, the challenge is clear. God calls you as a man to be the man he built you to be. And stop stepping back and letting everything else pass you by. Because I promise you, the whole concept of us needing to be challenged and needing to have those, whatever that adrenaline rush is, you give your life to Christ and try to live his challenge, and it will be by far the biggest challenging thing you've ever done in your life. And it'll change you as a man. Tonight, the band's going to come back up, and they're going to sing a song called It's Not Over. And the whole point of that message is very clearly this. Tonight is not you can start being who you're called to be. It is not too late for that. It is not too late to step up tonight and take that challenge to be God's man.